The glittering landscape of modern entertainment often presents an illusion of absolute harmony, a flawless veneer where young stars grow up together under the warmth of Hollywood spotlights, forming bonds that the public assumes are unbreakable and entirely supportive. We watch these child prodigies navigate the sudden onslaught of global fame, stepping onto massive sound stages that become their secondary homes, and we naturally believe that within those exclusive creative circles, a deep sense of camaraderie prevails. The cultural phenomenon of a hit television series does not just capture the imagination of millions of viewers worldwide, it creates an intense, pressure cooker environment for the cast members who spend their formative years sharing long hours, intense scenes, and the unique isolation that comes with overnight celebrity status. Yet, beneath the coordinated press tours, the glamorous red carpet appearances, and the seemingly endless stream of synchronized social media posts lies a complex tapestry of human interactions, cultural clashes, and the quiet vulnerabilities of individuals trying to maintain a sense of identity while being scrutinized by both their peers and the world. It is within these hidden spaces of high-profile productions that smaller, deeply personal dramas unfold, dramas that rarely make the headlines initially but leave a lasting impression on those who experience them. This environment, while exhilarating, can also become a place of unexpected alienation, where the simplest personal habits or traditions become targets for misunderstanding, highlighting the invisible boundaries that exist even among the closest of colleagues. If you find these deep dives into the unseen realities of the entertainment industry captivating, please take a brief moment to subscribe to our channel, as your support allows us to continue uncovering the remarkable stories behind the cameras and exploring the fascinating human dynamics that shape our favorite media. The journey of a young actor transitioning from a relatively quiet life into the epicenter of global pop culture is filled with sharp contrasts, especially when that transition involves moving between entirely different cultural landscapes. Imagine stepping onto a bustling multi-million-dollar set in the heart of North America as a young teenager, carrying not just the weight of a demanding character, but also the distinct habits, tastes, and vocabulary of a traditional British upbringing. For an individual raised on the historic streets and specific domestic rhythms of the United Kingdom, the transition to an environment dominated by contemporary American norms can be an overwhelming sensory shift, where everything from everyday speech patterns to the collective expectations of daily life feels fundamentally altered. On these vast production lots, where hundreds of crew members and a tight-knit ensemble cast work tirelessly to bring an extraordinary fictional universe to life, the routine moments between filming often become the true test of belonging. The communal spaces, the dressing rooms, and the catering areas are where the actors let down their guard, seeking comfort in the familiar comforts of home to balance the immense creative energy demanded of them on camera. It is a setting where the need for a personal sanctuary is paramount, yet it is precisely in these moments of relaxation that the subtle friction of differing cultural backgrounds can manifest in unexpected and challenging ways. This subtle friction often centers around the most fundamental aspects of human comfort, such as the food we choose to sustain ourselves during long, exhausting days of work. Food is never merely a matter of sustenance. It is an intimate reflection of our heritage, a sensory anchor to our childhoods, and a source of emotional security when we are far from the places and people that raised us. For a British youth immersed in an American workspace, the longing for a specific flavor, a familiar texture, or a traditional dish is a natural longing for home, a way to ground oneself amidst the dizzying whirlwind of international stardom. However, when those deeply personal choices are brought into a shared environment where a different cultural consensus reigns supreme, they can easily become a source of curiosity, confusion, and eventually, a strange form of social pressure. What seems entirely normal, comforting, and quintessentially ordinary to one person can appear bizarre, outdated, or even incomprehensible to those raised with an entirely different culinary vocabulary. This invisible divide can transform a simple meal into an accidental battleground of identity, where a young performer is forced to navigate the collective reactions of peers who view the world through a distinctly different lens. The collective dynamic of a young cast can be incredibly powerful, shifting rapidly from playful teasing to an overwhelming wave of conformity that leaves little room for individual divergence. In the intense environment of a major production where peer groups are small and tightly knit, the desire to fit in and avoid becoming the center of negative attention is an incredibly strong force, especially for a developing teenager. When a group of energetic, tightly bonded individuals observe something that falls outside their shared cultural framework, their collective reaction can create an atmosphere that feels intensely isolating for the person on the receiving end. This dynamic is not necessarily born out of malice, but rather from a collective lack of exposure to the broader world, a localized provincialism that assumes its own customs are the universal standard. For the individual who stands apart, however, the intent behind the reaction matters far less than its emotional weight, turning moments that should be restful into periods of acute self-consciousness and quiet retreat. As the days blend into months across multiple seasons of production, these small, repetitive interactions can accumulate, gradually eroding a person's confidence in their own habits and forcing them to alter their behavior simply to maintain peace. The subtle shift from open enjoyment to cautious concealment marks a poignant turning point in how a young star navigates their environment, illustrating how quickly the pressure to conform can infiltrate even the most familiar routines of daily life. The wider implications of these behind-the-scenes dynamics extend far beyond the specific individuals involved, touching upon a broader societal tendency to judge and label the unfamiliar. We often see this manifest in the way different cultures perceive each other's traditional comforts, where historical practices are viewed through a modern, skeptical lens, detached from the genuine warmth and satisfaction they provide. The reaction of an audience to these personal revelations often mirrors the initial reactions on set, creating a secondary layer of debate that ripples through communities and sparks wider conversations about empathy, respect, and the boundaries of harmless jesting. It forces us to reflect on our own tendencies to question the choices of others, and highlights how easily a sense of alienation can be constructed over something as simple as a shared midday meal, leaving a lasting impression that lingers long after the cameras have stopped rolling. The delicate balance between maintaining one's cultural heritage and trying to fit into a dominant social group became a daily challenge for Millie Bobby Brown on the set of Stranger Things. As the phenomenal success of the show catapulted its young cast into global superstardom, the physical environment of the set became a microcosm of intense social dynamics. Here she was, a young British actress surrounded by an entirely American cohort of co-stars who shared a completely different set of cultural references, slang, and culinary habits. The friction began in the most mundane setting imaginable, the lunchtime break. Seeking the ultimate comfort food from her home country, Millie frequently opted for a classic British jacket potato, which is a meticulously baked potato known for its crispy skin and fluffy interior. To complete this traditional dish, she would top it with a generous portion of baked beans, melted cheese, and a definitive splash of tangy HP sauce. To any household across the United Kingdom, this combination represents the absolute pinnacle of simple, soul-warming comfort food. It is an affordable, ubiquitous staple enjoyed by millions of families, students, and workers looking for a hearty meal. But to the eyes of her young American castmates, who were accustomed to fast food culture, standard cafeteria options, and entirely different flavor profiles, this steaming foil-wrapped dish looked like a bizarre relic from a completely different era. The reaction from the American actors was immediate, vocal, and relentless, transforming what should have been a relaxing break into a stressful gauntlet of social judgment. They would look at the foil-wrapped potato with a mixture of intense confusion and vocal mockery, frequently asking her what on earth she was eating. The teasing quickly took on a sharp edge as they jokingly compared her choice of food to something a person would consume in the 19th century, implying that her diet was primitive, old-fashioned, and incredibly strange. They openly wondered how anyone could enjoy a potato smothered in baked beans, viewing it not as a legitimate meal but as a bizarre culinary anomaly. This constant stream of remarks created an atmosphere where Millie felt isolated and deeply misunderstood. The repetitive nature of these comments began to wear down her resilience, turning a simple preference into a source of acute emotional discomfort. The term food shaming perfectly describes the experience she endured, where an individual is made to feel embarrassed, inadequate, or socially rejected because of what they choose to eat. For a young teenager navigating the complexities of identity under the watchful eyes of both her peers and a massive crew, this persistent criticism became too much to handle openly. Instead of defending her favorite meal or engaging in endless arguments with her co-stars, Millie began to adapt her behavior in a way that highlighted the deep impact of their words. She started actively retreating from the communal eating areas, choosing to take her jacket potato and seek out isolated corners of the production lot where she could eat in absolute peace, completely hidden from the judgmental gazes of her colleagues. When forced to explain her food, she would lower her voice in a deeply embarrassed, apologetic tone, trying to minimize the dish by telling them it was just a jacket potato and that it was nothing special. This defense mechanism allowed her to avoid conflict, but it also meant she had to sacrifice her comfort and sense of belonging just to enjoy a taste of home. The revelation of this behavior struck a deeply resonant chord with the public when Millie finally shared the story during a recent interview on the popular internet show Hot Ones. While she attempted to look back on the experience with laughter and a mature sense of detachment, the audience reaction online was swift, highly protective, and intensely critical of her American co-stars. On platforms like Reddit, massive threads immediately formed as fans analyzed the exact nature of the interactions described. Many viewers expressed genuine anger and disappointment, labeling the behavior of the American cast members as unnecessarily rude, provincial, and exclusionary. For many observers, the most upsetting part of the entire narrative was the fact that Millie felt compelled to hide in a corner just to consume her lunch without being ridiculed. Commenters pointed out that making fun of someone's cultural food choices is a particularly hurtful form of bullying, as it attacks a direct link to a person's heritage and home life. The online community quickly polarized into those who viewed the incident as typical, harmless adolescent teasing and those who recognized it as a clear manifestation of cultural intolerance and peer pressure. The debate grew rapidly, expanding from a specific commentary on the cast of a television show into a much wider conversation about how people treat unfamiliar customs. People from various cultural backgrounds began sharing their own agonizing stories of being ridiculed at school or work for bringing traditional meals that did not conform to the local majority standard. The overarching sentiment among the public was that no one should ever be made to feel small or ashamed for enjoying the foods that bring them comfort. The discussion also opened up a fascinating window into the persistent stereotypes that continue to surround British cuisine on the international stage. For decades, a lazy and outdated narrative has circulated globally, particularly in North America, claiming that English food is universally bland, uninspired, and poorly prepared. This stereotype, often rooted in historical wartime rationing that ended generations ago, has somehow managed to survive in popular culture, leading people to dismiss an incredibly rich culinary tradition without ever experiencing it. As fans rallied to defend Millie, they also took the opportunity to launch a passionate defense of British food as a whole, dismantling the old myths with fierce enthusiasm. Users pointed out the irony of Americans finding a baked potato exotic or strange, given that potatoes are a universal staple worldwide. The focus shifted to celebrating the genuine merit of these traditional dishes, arguing that the simplicity of British comfort food is precisely what makes it so exceptional. The public defense of the jacket potato quickly transformed into a broader celebration of the United Kingdom's diverse and deeply satisfying food culture. People who had moved to Britain from countries like Canada or the United States chimed in to share how their initial skepticism had been completely shattered upon arrival, revealing how they quickly became utterly obsessed with the local offerings. They spoke passionately about the unmatched perfection of a well-made Sunday roast with towering Yorkshire puddings, the savory indulgence of a toad in the hole, and the simple perfection of high-quality ham, eggs, and chips. The conversation highlighted how modern British food culture is vibrant, deeply tied to high-quality local ingredients, and immensely comforting to those who give it a fair chance. Even casual staples like sausage rolls from high-street bakeries or fresh fish and chips from a coastal shop were elevated to culinary triumphs by enthusiastic defenders. Tourists who had visited London expecting terrible meals recounted walking through the city for days, completely in love with the endless variety of excellent food and drink available at every turn. Ultimately, the collective response to Millie's story served as a powerful reminder of how judgmental people can be over the most trivial matters. The incident showed that even in the highest echelons of Hollywood luxury, young people are still vulnerable to the basic dynamics of peer exclusion and cultural misunderstanding, leaving a lasting impression on how fans view the real-life relationships behind their favorite show. The ultimate resolution of Millie Bobby Brown's food-shaming experience speaks volumes about her personal growth, resilience, and the journey she has taken from a vulnerable child star to a confident global entrepreneur. Growing up in the intense glare of the public eye means that every awkward phase, every personal struggle, and every instance of peer conflict is amplified to an extraordinary degree. For Millie, navigating those formative years on the set of Stranger Things meant balancing the immense creative demands of her character, 11, with the everyday challenges of adolescence. The pressure to conform to American standards was constant, and the teasing she faced over her beloved jacket potato was a poignant example of the invisible obstacles international actors face when trying to preserve their identity abroad. Yet, as the years progressed and the series moved toward its highly anticipated conclusion, Millie began to find her own voice and establish her own boundaries. She no longer felt the need to hide in the corners of production, lots or apologize in a lowered voice for the traditional British comfort foods that brought her a sense of home and security. Instead, she leaned fully into her heritage, embracing her identity with a sense of pride that resonated deeply with her millions of fans around the globe. This evolution from a self-conscious teenager who concealed her meals to a mature woman who openly shares her experiences on massive internet platforms like Hot Ones demonstrates a profound shift in power dynamics. It highlights how time, self-reflection, and professional independence can transform a source of past embarrassment into a celebrated badge of cultural authenticity. The journey of Millie Bobby Brown is not just a story about a young actress defending her lunch choices. It is a broader narrative about overcoming the subtle, pervasive pressures of social exclusion and reclaiming one's narrative in an industry that often demands total uniformity. To fully understand why this specific incident resonated so deeply with the public, one must look at the remarkable trajectory of Millie's life and career, which has always been defined by a unique cross-cultural existence. Born in Spain to British parents, she moved back to the United Kingdom at a young age before relocating to the United States to pursue her acting ambitions. This transient childhood gave her a global perspective, but it also meant that her sense of home was deeply tied to specific cultural touchstones, such as the traditional meals prepared by her family. When her American co-stars mocked her jacket potato, they were not just criticizing a vegetable, they were inadvertently attacking her connection to her family, her upbringing, and the British identity she fought hard to maintain while working in Hollywood. The public's overwhelming defense of her choices serves as a validation of that identity, proving that the modern audience deeply values cultural diversity and authenticity over the forced assimilation that often characterizes tight-knit peer groups. Furthermore, Millie's ability to laugh about the situation today, while still acknowledging the emotional weight it carried at the time, shows a level of emotional intelligence that sets her apart as a role model for young people worldwide. She has used her platform not to breed animosity or launch a public feud with her former colleagues, but to shed light on a common human experience, reminding her viewers that everyone, regardless of their status or fame, deserves to eat what they love without fear of judgment. The ripple effects of this viral moment have also had a surprising and overwhelmingly positive impact on the perception of British cuisine globally, sparking a massive renaissance of appreciation for traditional comfort foods. For years, the international community has leaned on outdated cliches regarding English food, but the passionate defense launched by fans and culinary enthusiasts has turned the tide completely. Across various social media platforms, the jacket potato with beans and cheese has experienced a massive surge in popularity, with creators and food bloggers creating tutorials on how to achieve the perfect crispy skin and fluffy interior that Millie defended so fiercely. People who had never even heard of HP sauce are now actively seeking it out, eager to experience the exact flavor profile that caused such a stir on the set of one of the biggest television shows in history. This cultural shift demonstrates the incredible power of celebrity influence when it is anchored in genuine, relatable human experiences. By simply being honest about her childhood habits and the vulnerability she felt, Millie inadvertently dismantled decades of culinary snobbery, replacing it with a widespread curiosity and enthusiasm for simple, hearty, and authentic British cooking. It proved that the true value of food lies not in its complexity or how exotic it appears to outsiders, but in its ability to provide comfort, evoke memories, and connect us to our roots. As the entertainment industry continues to evolve, the lessons learned from Millie's experience remain highly relevant for future generations of young performers who must navigate multicultural workplaces. The initial reaction of her American co-stars, though likely intended as thoughtless adolescent ribbing, underscores the critical need for cultural empathy and open-mindedness from a young age. It serves as a reminder that what seems unfamiliar or unusual to one person is a cherished tradition to another, and that true camaraderie is built on curiosity and acceptance rather than mockery and exclusion. The fact that the online community rallied so strongly behind Millie shows that the public is increasingly intolerant of casual bullying and food shaming, demanding a higher standard of respect and empathy in both private and professional circles. Ultimately, this entire episode has transformed a small, forgotten, behind-the-scenes anecdote into a powerful testament to the enduring strength of cultural identity. Millie Bobby Brown's journey through the whirlwind of global fame has been marked by numerous triumphs, but her quiet victory over the social pressures of her youth remains one of her most inspiring achievements. She has shown her fans that it is entirely possible to conquer the world while staying completely true to who you are, down to the very food you choose to put on your plate. As she moves forward into the next chapters of her illustrious career, leaving the world of Hawkins, Indiana behind, she carries with her the knowledge that her authenticity is her greatest strength, and that a simple jacket potato, wrapped in foil and covered in beans, will always be a proud symbol of home.